I would venture to guess, I haven't tracked the stats on this, but I would venture to guess almost every other person who reaches out to us for an initial visit has either some form of anxiety or depression on their top 3 to 5 concerns, that they list out in terms of symptoms or top concerns or complaints about what they have going on with their health. And that is so telling to me. Because they've done things. They've been on antidepressants. They've worked with Western medicine. They have done therapy. It's like, think of the gamut that we know from Western medicine to try to handle those parts of our lives. I've had a bout of depression, so I'm no stranger to what people are talking about when they're in the thick of it. And Western medicine didn't work for me. In fact, it really failed me. And left me like a zombie on the couch for several months. And that's when my mom and I looked at each other and we were like, this does not work. This isn't going to work for us. When I'm working with people here in the office, I can talk with them about their anxiety and or depression as a concern that they have, but it's not something that I can directly support or address, if that makes sense, doing what I do as an unlicensed holistic healthcare professional. But here's what happens. The majority of those folks have those concerns handled by just doing their nutrition response testing program. So they start feeding their body and they start feeding their brain in a way that they never have before. And then the result is they're far more balanced. I think we've had 2 total in my 9 years of practice who actually have stepped away from their program. And what is that called when you, the word's leaving me right now. They signed themselves into like a 30-day inpatient program, but it was really, really fascinating to watch their process of them looking to try everything that they hadn't tried to get their health on board. One was a male, one was a female. And so it was cool. Like they went and got handled what they needed to get handled. And it was cool to see. Triggers for mental health and well-being. This can include trauma. This can include stress. This can include toxicity. I was just having a conversation literally about 10 or 15 minutes ago around, because I said, well, do you have trauma in your background? And she said to me, well, like, what do you mean by trauma? And having spent time in trauma myself, but in also doing lots of interviews with professionals on a book that I had written a rough draft around, what occurred to me is that trauma, there's no trauma that can trump one other trauma, right? Like your experience is your experience, and maybe somebody looked at you wrong and it was unnerving to you. Maybe you got really scared or really startled, and that song that was playing in the background will forever be there, and you hear that song and you're immediately back in that startled and scared place. So trauma can be whatever trauma is for you. I think people also are sort of shocked to understand that there's good stress and there's bad stress. We would say like bad stress would be like my dog died, or I got into a car accident, or my basement flooded. Those are super bummer deals, right? But on the other end, you have good stress. I just got married. I got a new job. We won the lottery. I got a gift card in the mail that I didn't know about. Like those are all good things, but the impact on your body can be very similar. So those people who are going, and life is really good and it's awesome, and they've just got this pace, and it's like a rat race, as much as it is dealing with the flooding in your basement and the fact that your dog died and all of that adding up. So stress is stress is stress is stress. It's just a matter of how your body really handles that. Toxicity can be a trigger for mental health and well-being issues. And I believe that in a lot of ways, conventional medicine has failed to address what causes those feelings, and then why that's different from person to person. So it's not just a thing that we can put in a box and just handle. Now, again, this isn't like medical advice. This is just, notes that I have pulled together over my experience on mental health and wellness or well-being. I know for myself, I do believe that contraception is a problem that I think fed into my own experience. By the time I had my bout of depression, I was 19. I had already been on the pill for over 3 years, which was, I didn't know then what I know now, but my gut was already a problem when I was put on the pill. And I was put on the pill because I was concerned about my acne. I was concerned, like I had very bad cystic acne. And so they were like, well, that's, you know, you have endometriosis and you've tried, what is that antibiotic that people take for their skin? I can't remember right now. It starts with a T, I think. Anyway, I tried that and that didn't work. And so they were, well, just go on the pill because that will handle everything. It did not. It did not. I still had to have like a surgery to check for endometriosis. I still had cystic acne until I was like 32 years old. So it's really just something, it did more tearing apart of my gut than it did helping. So I could see how that fed into the depression that I experienced. At that point, I'd already been on about 24 rounds of antibiotics that I know of. So if we're not taking into consideration what's going on with the gut, how can we even take into consideration what's going on in both the heart and the brain? If you haven't heard of Dr. Kelly Brogan, who's a holistic psychiatrist, look her up. She is amazing. I just pulled this quote off of her website. She, you know, grew up, if you will, inside your typical Western medicine training and practice and was writing prescriptions. And then she herself, I think, had some health issues, maybe thyroid, I can't quite remember. And she realized that by handling it with lifestyle modifications and food and supplementation and exercise and whatnot, that she was able to turn her own health around, which completely turned around her own practice, which I find fascinating. So this is a quote from her. I practiced in this way for a couple of years, prescribing and strategically augmenting before understanding that true personalized lifestyle medicine obviates the need for medication. It gets to the root. I no longer wanted to enhance psychotropics. I wanted to eliminate them. So I love that. I love what she says about that. And Dr. Mark Hyman, who I've talked about on here a few times, a functional medicine MD, he really says now more than ever, we're inundated with toxicity. In fact, in one of his webinars, he spoke of what we breathe in, what we hear, what we see, what we put on our skin, what we put in our body. You know, it's not just about, you know, I think we kind of have it that it's just one thing that creates toxicity for us. And he really says what people benefit from is a subtle daily detox. So this isn't like just go do this cleanse for 10 days or just go do this one thing. It's like, what are you putting in that's an everyday practice and habit that you can rely on to not just maintain, but really to build your health and wellness over time, to subtly decrease the toxicity in the body. And it's been since like the 90s that we have been increasingly exposed to glyphosate herbicides. Okay, so these are found in our processed foods, on GMO crops, corn, soy, wheat, and potatoes in particular. And we see that show up on the daily here in our office with nutrition response testing in relation to all kinds of symptoms. Particularly in kids, we see behavior issues. I mean, again, we don't diagnose, but they're coming to us with a diagnosis. They're coming to us with ADD, ADHD, any sort of just behavior issues. Learning issues is a big one, dyslexia, just focus concentration issues in the classroom in general. And then we find this in the background, and it's kind of like, no wonder the light bulb goes on. So eating differently from the ground up, eating differently even prior to having children is going to make a difference down the road, generations to come. It disrupts our endocrine system, makes us deficient in minerals, and then that detrimental effect on our microbiome, that all ultimately affects our mental health. So the trail always comes back to how is the brain handling the stressor or the toxicity or the trauma of the situation at hand or in front of us. This is a quote from Dr. Mark Hyman. He wrote a book called Broken Brain, I think is the title of it. When you fix your body, you fix your broken brain. Your energy, memory, focus, and your joy will all increase. Depression will fade away like a bad dream. And I can just share from my personal experience, that is exactly what happened. I was 19. I had just experienced a date rape, kind of checked out for about 6 months, suddenly found myself in this deep depression. I had driven down to the University of Minnesota campus, didn't even know how I got there. Literally don't remember driving, and then finding myself in the middle of a hall knowing I needed to walk into my math class and was absolutely paralyzed and couldn't move. And then I remember calling my dad, and then I remember sitting on the floor in my basement, crying the day away and not remembering how I got to the U, how I got home, and just knowing I was in a pickle. And the psychologist I was seeing at the time, he made some suggestions, but none of them were lifestyle oriented. And I very quickly started to steer myself away from what wasn't serving me and what was keeping me in kind of an ongoing dialogue of the same story, and started to look at what makes me feel good, eat that. What doesn't make me feel good, don't eat that. Exercise made me feel good, do more of that. Traveling made me feel good, do more of that. Do more climbing, hang out with friends, do more mountain biking. Those things fed me. And the more I fed, if you will, my soul, the healthier I got over time. I also at the time was using things like, I started using acupuncture. I was doing all kinds of body work at the time, chiropractic care. I was supplementing a little bit. I didn't know much about supplementation at the time, other than your average multivitamin, which I know probably wasn't even great at the time. Fish oils I was on, that I definitely understood that connection. And then we have to understand the background of food sensitivities and allergies. So those create like a host of what people could call, mental symptoms. Like in depression is one of those. Gluten and dairy in particular, and for dairy it's the casein. It's the protein in the milk. It's the casein, which is the protein, that are more linked to the mood disorders and the altered brain function. So no wonder when we take kids off of gluten and dairy, we see a more calm, mild-mannered child. That might not even be getting necessarily at the root of the problem, but it's going to help bring some calm to the nervous system, so you can kind of see what's next, where to go next with that child. There are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 or 9 different ways that you could start to look at or take on your mental health and well-being. And as I was putting all these notes together, I was like, wow, this is so similar to the sleep conversation that we had last week or the week before. And then at the end of the day, you guys, just lifestyle modification, right? Just healthy living from the inside out, exercise, fresh air, get some sun, eat whole food. Like, those are 5 things that I really believe should be in our daily, just should be in your kind of, it should just be what we do. That's my opinion, like what we do. And then it doesn't occur like another thing to have to show up for or participate in. It's just what we do before we move on with our day. That's just my personal opinion. So sleep is huge. Getting in that rhythmic, getting that circadian rhythm in place, whether it's, lights out by 10, you're up by 6, or you are at least in bed by 10 and you're waking by 6. You might not roll out of bed right away, but having a rhythm there, and kind of a pre-sleep rhythm or activity to start calming things down. Okay, so that can be something to look at around your sleep. Also, a very dark room. If you need a mask, that can be quite helpful. I know we have this little light post in our neighborhood, and I always think that's nothing. But now that I sleep with a mask on, wow, does it seem bright in our room when I don't have that mask on. So it's the difference between like being up at my parents' cabin in the woods, where it's just dark as dark as dark. I love sleeping up there. And then literally looking at how I can recreate that in our bedroom so that I have that peaceful, completely quiet and completely dark space. That's how I'm going to get my best sleep. And sometimes that means I'm sleeping by myself, to be honest with you. So that I don't have kids sleeping like a starfish or my husband snoring or something next to me. Sometimes mama needs to sleep alone. Optimizing your diet. We've talked whole foods. I'll talk about whole foods, ongoingly and a lot. Specifically, seafood is really great. Collagen is great. I'm going to run down a list of things here for you. I go. Grass-fed meats. Really great sources for that are like U.S. Wellness Meats, or Butcher Box is a nice, kind of door-to-door delivery grass-fed meats option. Tulsi green tea is great as a coffee substitute for those who don't do coffee. For those who want coffee, we recommend like a mushroom, like a reishi mushroom. Go like the Ganoderma route for coffees if you're going to take that in. Himalayan sea salt. We need those trace ionic minerals in place. Grass-fed organ-based supplementation. This is why I'm a huge fan of Standard Process and just the clean methods that they have in place to put their supplementation together. I've been to the farm. It's just a phenomenal phenomenal place. So we need those like building blocks. They do, what does Dr. Ewan call them? Replacement parts for the body. But it's so true. Really what we need for healthy brain, heart, and gut health includes grass-fed organs. So if you're not going to eat the food, if you're not going to eat liver and heart and tongue, if you're not going to get that in your diet on liver somewhat regular basis, then you're going to want to supplement in some capacity with grass-fed organ-based supplements. Raw nuts and seeds. So there are all kinds of, Go Raw is actually a favorite brand. You get a nice bag of, my favorite is the Go Raw sunflower seeds. They are so fantastic. I think they're sprouted. And they have some little like nuggets, little bites, little snacks that they put together, which are so delicious. They also have some little, that same brand has little, like little bars. So really raw nuts in general, raw nuts and seeds. Bone broth, fantastic. Wild salmon. Sardines, so good. Little crackers, yummy. Those are good foods to support your mental health. The other thing is B12 and folic acid are quite supportive. D3, at least 2,000 I use a day as a place to start for people. Even when it's summer, if you really think about how little time people actually spend outside, you really want to make sure that D3 comes on in for you. And reducing inflammation. It's a little bit like, this is your sugar conversation again, over and over and over, reducing these sugars. Obviously start with your donuts and your Pop-Tarts and your sodas, and then, move on up, whether it's a beer after work or alcohol or wine in the evening. Grains, dairy can provide lots of sugars that can feed. If we have these immune challenges, it can feed this imbalance. Then we end up with some metabolic stuff. So if you want to kind of back that train up and reduce inflammation just like that, get your white refined sugar out. Here's one thing I tell moms who are really struggling with kids who are behavior is an issue. A lot of times we do have chemical toxicity going on with kids. Food dyes are a big problem. Fragrances are a big problem. Trying to think of what tests a lot for these kiddos. Those are the two primaries that I see creating lots of problems. But the amount of sugar that they get in their diet, moms are not putting it together. But if they've got that Capri Sun and that Nature Valley granola bar, and they've got their little Go-Gurt, and they have, that right there supersedes their, the American Heart Association recommended daily amount of sugar for, an elementary school kiddo. So you've got to break that down and look at how can you give them some whole food options instead. And take that inflammation down by taking the sugar out, but then really debugging the system. So what bugs are being fed by the high sugar foods that we are consuming? And we are consuming them because we are the ones who are choosing them off of the grocery shelf. So it really does come down to us as moms being responsible for what's coming in. Doesn't mean we have to be no moms all the time. No, we can't have this. No, we can't have that. It means just creating those boundaries and creating those special opportunities for where they might get that special treat, or where, maybe it's for grandma's house, or when they have a friend over, something like that. Got to get rid of those bugs. Digestion, we want to handle the digestion. So we were talking recently about stress, and stress, the way it hits our body is that it will hit the endocrine organ first. So organs or glands. So you're going to disrupt the endocrine system. So your hormones are going to go out of balance. And when that happens, then your cardiovascular system gets hit and gets stressed and goes out of balance. And then your digestion takes a hit and just turns off. So we need to make sure we're making enough stomach acid to break down our foods. So we want to handle digestion and support that really well. And then really regulating your nervous system. So you've got to look at, what do you need to do to calm your mind? For some people, it's exercise. For some, they just need their alone time. For some, they want to, veg out with the TV. I would really caution you to, sure, have that TV time, or watch that movie, or watch that show with your partner or your spouse, but then separate yourself from a screen for downregulating your nervous system. We have apps and things that we plug into, meditations and kind of guided journeys and things that you can listen to. Even like, there are all kinds of, they're like parasite frequencies that you can tap into. All of those will help to deregulate the nervous system, but we do kind of have to plug in. So I would say, find that app, download what you can, and then put your phone on airplane or do not airplane mode or do not disturb. So you're not also, picking up all those EMFs, and then be in that space, carve out that time for yourself. Just last night, I was on a phone visit, and we've been talking about how stress has been testing for this individual when she's been in the office, and life happened, and so we need to do a phone visit last night instead of an in-person visit. And I said, so now we've been working together for a handful of weeks. When are you going to start addressing the stress in your life? And then came the laundry list of all the reasons why she couldn't, or all the things she has to do, all the people she has to tend to, how she gets up at 4 a.m, how she goes off to do another thing at 9 o'clock at night for a couple of hours with her spouse. And it's like, okay, but what's not being talked about is the downtime watching, TV, or the tuning out, where the opportunity is right there. We do have the time, but we're not prioritizing ourselves and our needs. And then what goes out is our mental health, our wellness. Just, it checks right out the window. I have a frog in my throat. So that's a really important piece. What do you need to do to calm the mind? What do you need to do to regulate the nervous system? I'll go over some resources in a second, but meditation is always the thing that comes up, and people shy away from it and are scared of it. It seems like a lot. It seems like a big thing to take on. I'll just share a few tips that I have learned around meditation. I have a very busy brain, and I'm just a busybody of a person. It is so my own fault. So I really do have to train myself to sit and be quiet with myself and allow myself to feel and be and hear and listen. And the laundry list comes in, I just acknowledge it and let it go out the other side. I had a feng shui consultant friend of mine who said, can you meditate for 9 minutes? Because I told her I was meditating for 5 minutes. And I was like, oh my gosh, 9 sounds like a really long time. Somebody can fill me in on this, but in the feng shui world, there's something about the number 9 and meditating for 9 minutes. And I started to do that, and it made all the difference in the world. And believe it or not, 9 minutes goes way faster than 5. When I'm doing a meditation, it just tickles me pink every time. So I just let the thoughts come in and out. I just notice them, but I don't dwell on them. And I'll bring myself back to my breath, or back to a phrase or a mantra or a word. Or sometimes one of my favorite things to do in the summer is if I've gone for a workout at a local CrossFit gym, I will go to the park down the road, and I'll just pop a squat on a picnic table or under a tree, and I just literally stare at the lake and just zone out. It's so amazing and blessed. I love it. So your meditation can really be what you create it, but it really needs to be time that's just for you, just me time. Exercise is also so important. And again, we have all the reasons why we can't. If you are a busy person, here is something that you could do. When I was raising littles, we still have a little guy at home, but when my girls were little and I had very little time away from them, that I wasn't seeing clients. So my exercise time then in some ways became my connect with friends time. So if they were like, oh, let's meet for coffee, I was, I'm not a coffee drinker, but here, can we just connect on the phone or meet me for a walk? So we would go for a jog or a walk or a bike ride or a hike, or I would use that time to be on the phone and be having a connection with them, a conversation with them while I was getting that hike or that bike ride or that walk in. So some people may diss me for being on the phone while I'm doing those things, but it allowed me, in the busy schedule that I had, that fed my soul because I got to connect with the human being that was important to me. And then it also fed my soul because I was able to give myself that space and exercise and fresh air that I needed to feel so good. So make it what you need it to be for you. And what else do I have here? Good reads, okay? A couple good books that I think you will love. I mentioned Dr. Kelly Brogan, 2 books that she's got. One, A Mind of Your Own. This is more around those who are dealing with depression, or I actually think could be great support if you are supporting a person who's dealing with depression. Own Thyself. I might be butchering that title, but I think it's Own Thyself. And Dr. Mark Hyman, I just got done reading a book called Food Fix. It was such a great book. He's got all these ideas, which are actually, in the grand scheme, quite simple to implement. And there aren't very many people doing it. And it's a crying shame because he's really got a lot of answers in there and truly a fix. Broken Brain, also a great one by Mark Hyman. And then a quick read. If you haven't familiarized yourself with the work of Louise Hay, sort of a self-help / empowerment author. She has got this book called You Can Heal Your Life. And you can actually look up per body system or per symptom or complaint. Like, let's say, I'm making this up, but let's say headaches. And then she'll give you what's going on energetically, like, I don't know, fear of being alone or something like that. And then she'll give you a mantra, the thing to focus on to help heal that area of your life. It's quite phenomenal, and it is entertaining. Especially when you're like, you look at it and you're like, oh, so that's the thing going on in the background. It's really, really helpful. And I find that phenomenal. Those books are often out of the office because we have a library here where we loan books out, and the Louise Hay books, they're always out. So it's like I need more copies than what I have. And then just a few resources. When we want to talk about regulating that nervous system and calming the mind, if meditation isn't quite your gig, other things that you could look at are like Qigong is one, Tai Chi is one, the emotional freedom technique. We have a couple videos of sessions around EFT on our blog that you can check out. AIET, which is, I forget what the acronym stands for. It's a muscle testing technique. And one of the things we offer here is Psych-K. And I really do have to say, that is such a, dare I say, fun conversation and opportunity to jump into, to kind of see what limiting beliefs you're dealing with. And it really helps people who they're PTSD, or they have some sort of depression, they have some sort of trauma, they have some sort of pain, or this ongoing chronicity and severity to their health that nobody can really seem to get their hands on and get handled. And when we start dealing with it from handling that stress and handling the limiting beliefs that we carry around that we're typically not conscious of, right? Because this is just all subconscious mind jazz. It's pretty phenomenal how quickly people can start to feel better, and really truly how they can take their health into their own hands, and two, start healing. It's powerful stuff. For those of you who are like learning junkies, Dr. Bruce Lipton is a phenomenal resource, and you can follow him on YouTube. He's this cute little old man. He's a cell biologist, and he was a co-founder of Psych-K, which is part of what pulls me to that technology to use here with our clients, alongside with nutrition response testing. So with nutrition response testing, we can handle the physical aspect of what's going on with the body. And we can make recommendations or referrals if some structural things are coming up. But if stress continually comes up outside of supplementing, there's not a way with nutrition response testing to handle that. So then what we do is have them schedule an appointment and do some Psych-K work and start working through some of these things. And it's a pretty incredible experience. So you've got good reads, you've got good resources, you've got good foods, some supplemental ideas, kind of a checklist of things to look in on in terms of your mental health and well-being. And again, this isn't meant to be medical advice by any means, just a place to look if you haven't. And or keep in mind, sometimes it's a combination of things. If we are doing just one thing and we've been doing it a really long time and we're not getting any results, or we're not getting results that we're happy with, then you've got to look at what else do you need to bring in. A lot of these issues we're dealing with are so multifaceted that it does require good sleep, good food, different therapies and modalities, and that we're doing all at one time. So it doesn't mean anything about you. It just means you're looking for more support, and the more support you have, the better you will be feeling. Okay, so if you are looking for options to optimize your whole mind and body, we are here to help at My Healthy Beginning. You could give us a call today, 612-418-3801. And thanks for joining me today.